Now we get to talk about rattlesnakes a little bit. And Ian Armesy is just finished his freshman year at Principia as a biology major and joined my rattlesnake tracking team this year for the first time. And he's going to be speaking on the comparison of movement patterns. We've been looking at how rattlesnakes distribute across Principia campus forest and looking at the rate of movements between them as a behavioral characteristic. And so he's going to be speaking today on the comparing of the 2015 to the 2016 data.
Thanks, Scott. So, like Scott said, I'm Ian, and I am doing a comparison between last year and this year's movement data of timber rattlesnakes, or Crotalus horridus. So, the reason why I'm doing this is because the identification of movement patterns can provide very valuable insight into the life history of animals. This can also help to understand foraging and mating strategies, and can also help to see exactly how the habitat is being utilized by the animals. In 2015, Jesper et al. Monitored the movements of 11 timber rattlesnakes on the Principia College forests. He found that the movement patterns can be categorized into 3 different styles. There's the spring and fall migrations, foraging, and mate searching. During migrations, there's the egress, or spring migration, which is from the hibernacula to the foraging range. And ingress, which is the fall migration, which is returning to the hibernacula. Now, these are characterized by very directional movements with little to no stopping. During foraging, foraging period is determined by the snake remaining in roughly the same spot for at least 3 days. And it was found that the end of foraging season is different for males and females. Male snakes will go from their foraging movement patterns into mating movement patterns, whereas female snakes will continue to forage all throughout mating season, although they have slightly less movement. In the mating season, the male snakes will show the biggest change in behavior, and they will have much higher daily rates of travel because they are looking for the mate. They're the active searching party in the mating season. And they travel in straight lines primarily to maximize the percentage of finding a mate. Female snakes, however, are the opposite. They will show the least amount of movement than any other season during mating season. So the purpose of this study is to see if 2015 data is, roughly correlated with this year's, to see if there's consistency in movements. So this was done in 2015. 11 snakes were captured, and VHF radio transmitters were surgically implanted. Using directional antennas, snakes are currently tracked and located every day. The location of these snakes is determined and recorded using GPS receivers, and the internal temperatures, as well as the microhabitats that the snakes are found, are also recorded. The distance traveled between consecutive days is calculated by measuring straight line distance between each location. And the movement distances were correlated to weight and sex of each animal, and then were further compared to data from 2015. And as our results, we are indeed showing very similar movement patterns between 2016 and 2015. And just from the average daily rates of travel, we're seeing that the males are indeed traveling more than females, which can be contributed to mating season. However, this year we do see that all the snakes in general are showing higher rates of travel. And this can be contributed to the fact that the snakes are growing larger, as well as weather and other unknown variables. So during the migration this year, we did indeed see that most of the snakes were very direct out to their foraging patterns, and the dates of these movements correlate very closely with last year's data. Also, during the foraging season, very similar to last year, the snakes were primarily found in the same spot for 3 or more days, and they stayed within a fairly concentrated area, even when they were moving. And during the mating season for the males, even though we have just begun, just like this past few weeks have been the beginning of mating season, but we're already seeing the very exaggerated movements of the males as they are trying to search for mates. And the females, as expected, were the opposite, where there's almost no difference between their foraging as well as their mating season movements. Now, one major difference between last year and this year's studies was that this year we've had the opportunity to track a gravid female for one of our snakes. In July of 2015, this female snake was attended by an untagged male for approximately 2 weeks. And then after that, she was attended by a snake that we were actually tracking for a following week. As you can see here, the green dots are all the male snakes. The white is all the female snakes. And this is where, for a week, they were in very close proximity to one another. Now, the movement of gravid females is much slower than any other kind of snake. They are staying primarily near the hibernacula, and they're mainly found to be sunning. So I have not come across you doing any sort of foraging or any movement of any consequence. And just the total movement is over 500 meters, which is far less than any of our other snakes, regardless of the size. Her average daily movements are, again, a fraction of any other snake, and the majority of that is attributed to her presumed migration season, where she was moving over 20 meters a day, approximately. However, now that we are into the foraging and mating season, she is moving close to 3 meters a day. So, in conclusion, the movement behavior of the snakes varies greatly depending on the season. In the spring, the movements of the snakes are almost straight out to their foraging sites with little to no stopping. While in the foraging sites, the snakes will move much less compared to the migration. For males, this is the least amount of movement in the entire year, or in the entire time of them being out of their hibernation. Now, we have only just begun mating season because the study is ongoing. But just from the first few weeks, the males are already showing very significant signs of the fact that we are indeed in mating season. And fall migration, of course, hasn't yet happened, but judging on how these snakes have reacted, or how the snakes have compared from last year, I do predict that it will be quite similar to last year's data. So, this far, I can say that the study this year is looking very similar to last year's movements. I would like to thank Principia College, Lewis and Clark Community College, and the National Great Rivers Research and Education Center for making this internship possible. I would also like to thank Scott Eckert, who has been my advisor for this internship, as well as Samson Myers and Taylor Bookout, who are my fellow Rattlesnake internship members. and I'll take any questions that you have.
We have time for several questions. Probably quite silly. What does gravid mean?
It means that she is pregnant.
What is the actual mating system like for these snakes? And also, while they're mating, are the males, are they just moving more often? Are they moving further or in different directions? Or?
Well, to the last part of that question, the males will kind of move both. They'll move much farther. So each of these red points here, these are daily records. So between here and here, that was a day of movement. So it is much higher than any other season. And I haven't really seen any rhyme or reason to it, but it's definitely in straight lines trying to maximize the percentage that you'll be able to find a mate.
Were you able to get that data? Were you able to see them with females?
I haven't actually seen any males with females yet. It was just last year that we saw the one female snake with 2 snakes last year.
Hi, Ian. So you showed the comparison of the average daily movement rates from 2015 and 2016? Yes.
Yep.
And so, okay, so my first question is that for the same time, so the same number of collection tracking days that you were comparing, because obviously the study is ongoing, so that's kind of my first question.
Right, it is. I went from the first day of the study, which were incredibly close between last year and this year, by a matter of 2 or 3 days. And then I went to July 11th, which was, at the time of making this presentation, was the last known date of this year's data. And I correlated that up to July 11th with 2015's data.
Okay. So then when you started your data collection, you said, within a couple of days. So, because my second question was, was there a difference in timing of the egress? So, did they come out of their hibernacula earlier one year versus the next, or is that when your timing started? Was it based off of that?
Well, when they come out of the dens is dependent on temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So once it becomes warm enough for them, then they will come out and they'll remain, remain outside of their dens for a period of time until about when the season would start. So they do have kind of a date where they will start to go out. But yeah, it is dependent on temperature when they actually do come out of their dens.
So I guess I'm wondering if the difference that you're seeing there has anything to do with that egress timing. So how long had they already been kind of active?
Well, right,
I guess that's
right. That's a slight problem with the timing because we start the internship. All the snakes come out of the dens when we're basically taking our finals in school. So we can't really get out to track them every day until after school ends, which is why the spring migration started here in the middle of the forest versus out here on the bluff faces. So that's just kind of a problem that it's kind of hard to work around. But we do start almost exactly the same day. So
great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. Is there any speculation as to why the gravid females restrict their movement so much while during that mating season? Is it possible that they're trying to maintain a close proximity to a nesting site?
Yeah, so I believe that when a gravid female will have her young, then which will be about late August or so, she will go straight out to the foraging site and her young will follow her out to that area, and she'll stay out there for well, X number of days, not very long, because then she'll go back into the fall migration, back to that same foraging site. And she's primarily, the habitat that she's been showing has been her sunning. So I think that she's just been trying to conserve energy and keep her body temperature up so that she can have her young easily.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Great questions, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.